Hi, and welcome back to part two. So, in the first part of our discussion, we focus on leading project execution, coordinating the work of the project team, and capturing knowledge throughout the project life cycle. So, now let's turn our attention to one of the most important responsibilities of every project manager: monitoring and controlling project work. One lesson I have learned throughout my career is that projects rarely fail overnight. Most projects begin drifting off course gradually. A small schedule delay becomes 2 weeks. A minor budget overrun grows into a significant financial issue. A risk that seemed unlikely during planning suddenly becomes a reality. Unfortunately, many organizations don't recognize these warning signs until they have become major problems. That's the reason why monitoring is so important. So, monitoring is much more than receiving status reports or looking at a dashboard. It means continually asking questions. Are we achieving the results that we planned? Are we still on schedule? Are we spending resources as expected? Have new risks emerged? Are our stakeholders still satisfied with the direction of the project? The current PMBOK guide emphasizes delivering value throughout the project, not simply measuring activity. That means project manager must look beyond percentages completed or tasks finished. They need to understand whether the project is continuing to deliver the outcomes the organization expects. Think about driving a vehicle on a long trip. You don't wait until the engine fails before checking the dashboard. You're constantly observing your speed, fuel level, engine temperature, weather conditions, and traffic. These small observations allow you to make adjustments before the problems occur. So project management works the same way. Monitoring provides information. Control is what you do with that information. If performance begins to deviate from the plan, the project manager must determine the appropriate response. Sometimes the response must involves corrective action, sometimes preventive action, sometimes additional analysis before making a decision. Successful project managers don't manage by reacting to crisis. They manage by recognizing trends early and making thoughtful decisions before small issues becomes major problems. So as future managers, I encourage you to remember this principle. The earlier a problem is identified, the more options you have to solve it. That's one of the reasons continuous monitoring is so valuable. So now let's discuss another reality of project management. Change is inevitable. Sometimes students ask me whether frequent changes mean that project was poorly planned. The answer is usually no. Markets evolve, technology changes, customers discover new requirements, regulations change, organizational priorities change. So the environment around every project continues to evolve. The question is not whether change will occur. The question is whether change is managed in a disciplined way. So one of the biggest mistakes organization makes is implementing changes without fully understanding their consequences. Imagine that a customer requests one additional feature. At first glance, the request appears simple. However, after analysis, the team discovers that adding this feature requires additional software development, more testing, extra training, revised documentation, and several weeks of additional work. A small request suddenly affects the schedule, budget, quality, risk profile, and stakeholder expectations. So that is why project managers evaluate changes before implementing them. So the purpose of integrated change control is not to slow project down. Its purpose is to make informed decisions. Every significant change should be evaluated from multiple perspectives. What is the impact on the scope? What is the impact on schedule? Will cost increase? Will quality improve? Does the change increase or reduce project risk? Does it create greater value for the customer? These questions allow project leaders to make decisions based on evidence rather than assumptions. One practice I have found valuable throughout my career is never making major decisions based solely on urgency. Urgency often creates pressure. Leadership requires perspective. Sometimes the best decision is to approve a change immediately. Sometimes the best decision is to postpone it until additional information is available. And occasionally, the best decision is to say no. That's not resisting change. That is exercising sound judgment. So, as project managers, you will likely encounter different project delivery approaches throughout your careers. Some organizations operate in highly regulated environments where documentation and formal approvals are essential. Other organizations, particularly those developing software or digital products, expect frequent changes as customer needs evolve. Traditional or predictive projects generally rely on formal change requests and approved processes. Significant changes often require review by a sponsor or a change control board before implementation, while agile projects approach change differently. Rather than resisting change, agile teams expect it. Work is continuously prioritized based on customers' feedback and business value. However, it is important to understand that agile does not mean the absence of discipline. Changes are still evaluated, resources are still managed, business value is still considered. The difference is that agile provides greater flexibility within an established framework. So the current PMBOK guide reinforces an important idea here. There is no single project management approach that is appropriate for every project. Instead, project managers should tailor their approach to fit the organization's environment, the project's complexity, stakeholder expectations, and the desired outcomes. So as future leaders, avoid asking which methodology is best. Instead, ask which approach will best deliver value for this particular project. That's the question experienced project managers ask. So let's now move to the final stage of the project life cycle. Many people believe a project ends when the final product is delivered. Professional project management goes much further. Closing a project is about ensuring that the organization captures everything that the project has accomplished, not only the deliverables, but also the knowledge, documentation, relationships, and organizational learning creates along the way. Closing includes obtaining formal acceptance from customer or sponsor, completing all contractual obligations, archiving project documentations, transitioning the product or service to operations, releasing project resources, preparing the final project report, and documenting lessons learned for future projects. One observation I have made over the years is that organizations often devote enormous effort to starting projects but very little attention to finishing them properly. Yet, a poorly closed project can create problems long after implementation. incompleted documentation, unresolved contractual issues, unclear ownership, missing lessons learned. All of this all of this become risk for the next project. Professional project closure protects the organization's investment and prepares future project teams for success. So as managers, don't think of project closure as the end. Think of it as preparing the organization for its next opportunity. So as we conclude today's lessons, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Throughout this presentation, we have discussed directing project work, managing knowledge, monitoring performance, controlling changes, and closing projects. So at first glance, this may appear to be separate responsibilities. In reality, they're all connected by one common purpose: leadership. Successful project managers don't simply coordinate activities. They create alignment. They build collaboration. They make informed decisions. They communicate effectively. They adapt with circumstances change. And they help organizations achieve results that create lasting value. So as you continue through this course and begin developing your strategic organizational project proposal, I encourage you to move beyond thinking about project management as schedules, budget, and checklists. Instead, think about think about it as a leadership discipline. Ask yourself, how will this project improve my organization? How will it create value for stakeholders? What decisions will I need to make as a leader to help this project succeed? So, those questions are far more important than memorizing a process or completing a template. The tools are important, the techniques are valuable, but ultimately, successful projects are delivered by people who lead with integrity, communicate effectively, think strategically, and continuous focus on creating value. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's presentation. I encourage you to review the slides one more time after this lecture, paying, par- paying particular attention to the diagrams and key concepts, and think about how they apply to projects within your own organization. In our next discussion, we will continue building on these concepts as we explore additional project management topics and begin applying them to real organizational situations. So thank you, and I'll see you on our next session.